The game key for this review was provided by developer Trotsky. Selina Mind at Large is a story-based puzzle game from German developer Trotsky. Trotsky previously has done work in like the medical sector in VR, education sector, and they've done some location-based entertainment VR applications. As far as I can tell, this is their first game that you can play actually in your own home. The story centers around a young girl named Selina and kind of gets told in a fairy tale fashion, very similar to something like Moss. Selina's family is attacked by dark forces. All this plays out in like a storybook fashion in front of you, and her parents tell her to run away and run to safety. She meets another young girl named Lilith who quickly becomes her friend, and then shortly thereafter betrays her. You as the player have to travel into Selina's mind, with Selina herself being your guide, and travel through all of her memories of at home, at school, and other locations. And through solving all these puzzles, you basically help her put her fractured mind back together. It's basically a story about mental health. The story is also based off the teaching of Carl Jung. If you're not familiar with Jungian philosophy, it was the basis for the excellent JRPG Persona 4, and for VR fans, it was the underlying philosophy in Batman Arkham Shadow. Anyone who's played the Scarecrow section of that game will know what I'm talking about. When you enter all of these memories, you can teleport around the room, but the really cool thing about this is that you can also teleport to the walls and the ceilings of wherever you're at. And whenever that happens, the perspective of the room changes, so you're always standing on what becomes the floor. For instance, if you teleport to the ceiling now becomes the floor and the room completely turns. You have to do this to be able to solve all of the puzzles. The puzzles are basically water mazes, where the water starts flowing out of a whale statue's mouth, and then you have to guide the water from starting point to end point using these frozen blocks to redirect the flow of the water. It sounds a lot simpler than it really is, because the changing in perspective and being able to turn the room is essential to actually solving everything. For instance, you may place an ice block that will freeze the water and redirect it, and then when you flip the wall so you turn it about 90 degrees, now the water will flow in a different direction and onto another path. It's a type of puzzle game that I think really shines in VR, because you have to be really aware of where you are spatially and where the water is flowing spatially to be able to get it from beginning to end. The first few, like any puzzle game, is pretty simple, and then it starts to layer more and more complexity on top of it, to the point where by the end of the game, I was having to think about them for, I'd say, 20 or 30 minutes before I could figure it out. The narrator for most of the game, after you get through the introductory part, is Selina herself. And this is going to be the part where a lot of people are going to end up divided. Selina is a child, so most of what you're getting narration wise is going to be through a child's eye, and that may be off-putting to some people who, one, don't want to hear the sound of a kid when they're playing a full game, and two, are going to think that they're being talked down to. For me, this didn't bother me because I understood the story that the game was trying to tell. This is a kid who has been through a fair amount of trauma and is trying to seek as much comfort as possible, so she's going to sound more cheery and upbeat about every little thing that happens, because she's grasping at straws trying to find comfort in the smallest things. Again, this is probably going to be off-putting to some players, but I just wanted to be upfront about it. It didn't bother me one bit because I was really into the puzzle aspect of it, but if you just frankly don't like the sound of a child in the game that you're playing, you're probably not going to enjoy this. For me, I really love the way that these puzzle games were designed. I love spatial puzzles like this in VR, as opposed to just standing in one place, like hitting buttons or just moving pieces around to make it work. Something like the Seventh Guest VR, which is a fine enough game in its own right. I really enjoyed that game, but each puzzle pretty much has you just standing in one place until you figure out what you're supposed to do. In a game like this, you're moving around the space and seeing where, okay, if I place a frozen cube here, what does that do to the water? Okay, that moves the water here. Well, let me try putting the cube here and seeing what it does. There's a lot of experimentation, and it really feels like I'm inside a 3D puzzle. I really enjoy that aspect of it. It reminded me of two other games. One is The Last Clockwinder from Hello Pantoko. I thought that was an excellent game, and probably the best puzzle game I played that year. And the other one is an older game called Shadow Point from developer CodeSync. They're the makers of Jurassic World Aftermath. Again, an excellent puzzle game. In terms of presentation, the visuals are just okay, but what they really nailed is like the scope and scale of everything. You're walking through the memories of a child, so everything is just over exaggerated and bigger. One of the first areas you walk through is a library, but all of the books are just gigantically oversized and you feel like you're maybe like an inch tall. There's a central hub area that takes you from like Selina's home to her school to other locations, and you have to follow this like rainbow path of light to take you from location to location. Just doing something very simple like that, hopping from building to building and having everything turn as you were moving around, it felt like I was inside the Christopher Nolan movie Inception. Graphically, the game is not going to knock your socks off, it's more the presentation of the world that I was really impressed with. And the music in this game is fantastic. It really sells the fairy tale aspect of it, going dark where it needs to go dark, and then being more uplifting when you're around Selina and she's in a happy place, if that makes sense. Music doesn't get enough credit in VR games for really doing a great job of setting the tone and the atmosphere, but the music here really just added to the whole like whimsical nature of the game. So that's all the positive stuff, but what didn't I like about it? It's very easy to mess up a puzzle here. When I say mess up, I mean, let's say that you place a frozen cube off one track and then you teleport to one wall to see if the water flows in the proper direction. Well, if you teleport to the wrong wall and turn the room, you basically have to manually reset the puzzle to restart it. That got a little frustrating in spots, but frankly, I expect every puzzle game I've ever played to frustrate me, and normally I'm not let down by that. It was almost like Portal in that way, where I would just go to a space and then go, ah man, I should not have gone here. Okay, let me go erase the cubes and go back to the starting point and just start all over again. It feels weird to play a game in 2025 that is snap turn only, because it feels like the developer is playing it safe and not wanting to get anyone sick. I don't know why snap turn wasn't in, but it should have been an easy thing to add. The game runs and performs really smoothly. I didn't notice any real application space work. There were no drop frames or frame hitching. There was no stuttering. The compromise for that is that there are a lot of load scenes. Scenes don't really dynamically load as you move from room to room, so you're going to sit through a lot of loading scenes. They're maybe about 10 seconds long. If that's something that breaks your immersion, again, just want to be upfront about that. And then there's some of the voice acting. Not so much Selina being a kid herself. I explained I don't have a problem with that, but some of the voice acting is location specific. So if you were walking through a scene while Selina is talking to you, and you walked up to another point where another voice line is supposed to trigger, they start overlapping themselves, and that was really bad. I don't know if there's a solve to this. I don't know if the devs can just make sure that one line finishes before another line starts, but that was more disorienting than the room turning around me every time I teleported. In general though, I really like this game. If you're an action junkie and you don't really play puzzle games in VR, this one's not going to change your mind, so you might as well stay away. If you would like a good puzzle game, even though it's a hair on the repetitive side because you're essentially doing the same thing in every room, it's just presented differently, give Selina Mind at Large a try. I think you'll enjoy it. If you want to pick up the game, I do have my affiliate code linked down below in the description and in the pinned comment, so go ahead and check that out. And if you found this review helpful, like the video, share the video, and make sure to subscribe for more VR content. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.